gentlemen, may I have your attention, please? The show starts in 3, 2, 1, go.
What is going on, CaneSport? It is Izubee, Charles, and good morning to you all. It is March 23rd, 2023, and I would like to thank everyone for joining us on Good Morning CaneSport. Today, I'm joined by Stephen Wagner as we break down the news of the day. First up this morning in your Miami Hurricanes news, well, from yesterday, we had our updates with both the men and women's basketball team as they departed for what they hope to be a run to the Final Four. Both the men's and women's program team are one of 4 universities in the entire country. Yes, the entire country to have both the men and women's basketball team in the Sweet 16, with the men facing off against Houston and the women's team facing off against Villanova. So do not miss out on that content. Really good stuff from Coach Katie Meyer and Coach Jim Larinaga. This morning, we will be back on Green Tree Practice Field, bringing you video updates and everything you think of in between from spring practice number 5, I believe, including an update with head coach Mario Cristobal. So make sure to head back to the website later this morning for that and much, much more. And to hold you over till then, we have everyone's favorite part of the day, or news cycle, whatever you want to call it, recruiting. There is going to be a ton of recruiting on the site this morning, from guys coming in for visits tomorrow or this morning, Saturday, Sunday, and on. First off, we start off with Miami's top quarterback target in the 2024 class. Aaron Nolan will start his visit to Coral Gables this morning. Steven, you had the chance to catch up with Aaron Nolan, who we'll probably see in a few hours when we're out there in Coral Gables. What were your impressions of that conversation with him?
Yeah, Aaron is 100% the biggest recruit that Miami has had to campus in March. I know, obviously, Jeremiah Smith and Josiah Schrader, they've taken 1 billion visits to Miami at this point. But Aaron Nolan, this is going to be his 3rd trip down to Coral Gables. It's going to be his 2nd of 2023. And this is coming right after he took visits to Clemson and Arkansas earlier this month. And we've seen Clemson, really start to gain a little bit of recruiting momentum, especially on the offensive side, since they brought in Garrett Riley from TCU. And Garrett Riley has started to make his push for Aaron Nolan. And, we read in another article about Air after he visited Clemson that, he's kind of aware that the Tigers are kind of making a little bit of a later push compared to some other programs. But obviously, seeing what Garrett Riley did with Max Duggan last year, almost taking this guy from the quarterback of a 5-7 team to the Heisman, there's a lot of, there's obviously going to be a lot of interest there. But on the Miami side of things, Air continues to be pretty high on the Canes. Miami is very clearly in that top group of schools that's really jostling for position for him. But Miami does have stiff competition. That's why I brought up Clemson a moment ago, because now that Clemson's entered the picture, they're now trying to beat out Alabama. They're now trying to beat out Ohio State. They're now trying to beat out Texas A&M, which is a program that certainly hasn't had great results in past years, but has recruited immensely well under Jimbo Fisher. And obviously, they have a very, very strong NIL collective over there in College Station. So I view this as a really, really, really important visit. Air plans on announcing the schools that he's going to take his officials to after the spring. So he's really not in very much of a rush to, hurry up and make that decision, make that commitment or anything like that. So I think Miami's biggest goal here for today is going to be, hey, what can we do to get Air back for an official visit? Because obviously, if Aaron Nolan's going to commit right this second, if he literally shows up to Green Tree, goes up to Mario Cristobal and goes, I want to commit right now, they'll take it 100%. That's the end goal anyway. But in a much more realistic sense, I think that their big goal needs to be, we want Air to walk away from today thinking that's a school that I'm going to take an OV to. Because we've seen Miami really likes their chances with kids that they can get on campus for official visits.
Yeah, Air is one of the guys in the 2024 class that I've kind of labeled a priority for the Hurricanes. Really, really productive on the field and has a high character off the field, the type of guy that you would want to lead your program at the quarterback position. And staying on the topic of quarterback, there's another quarterback visiting Miami this weekend in 2024, 3-star out of Phoenix, Sunny Slope, Arizona, Luca Moya. Sorry if I butchered that. He took his first unofficial visit in January to Coral Gables, and he's returning. Steven, another guy you spoke with, just what were your impressions after that conversation?
Yeah, Luke's another guy who, a little bit of he's a 3-star. So in some sense, he may have flown under the radar a little bit, but this is a guy who Miami has remained high on really since Mario Cristobal showed up. He's a guy who Miami brought to campus back in January. And that visit went really, really well. Miami's been pretty high on him for some time. I'm starting to think, kind of looking at his measurables, I'm thinking maybe they see like a little bit of like Emory Williams type deal in there with him. 3-star quarterback, good frame, good arm. Guy that Miami obviously likes quite a bit. The reason he wanted to get back down in March after visiting in January is he said he wanted his mother to be able to come. He said he wanted his mother to be able to come down to Coral Gables to check it out. He said that both of his parents are going to play a really, really big factor in his recruiting and in his commitment decision. He chose not to disclose the schools that are really high on his list right now, but he did at least clarify that Miami is 100% one of those schools that's going to be really high on his radar. And he said that he's taking visits to the schools that he really likes a lot. And it's going to be really important to him for his parents to also be really big on whatever school he ends up committing to. That's going to be a real priority for Miami, is not only impressing Luke, but impressing his parents too.
Yeah, this weekend is shaping up to be a huge recruiting weekend for Miami. Coach Cristobal kind of reminds me of the junior day, that they had a few weeks ago. But this morning, Steven, we found out there's going to be a lot of guys at Miami today at practice. Starting off with Stacey Gage, the 2024 running back out of St. Thomas Aquinas, and a handful of other prospects, a lot of guys from Miami Central, a few more St. Thomas Aquinas guys. And one gentleman I spoke with yesterday, 2024 defensive lineman, Nelson Izubee from Miami Edison, who recently picked up that Canes offer, had the chance to, talk to him a little bit about the offer, what he thought of Miami. And my impressions from him is he's a local guy that wants to stay home and make Miami, a relevant program again. He talked about seeing guys like Ray Joseph from Miami Edison, who he played with last year, stay home, coming in, enroll early. And he says, hey, seeing a guy that I was playing with 3 months ago, going to Miami, making a name for himself, that just gives me even more motivation to kind of follow in his footsteps, kind of make my own path too. So hearing that from a local guy was kind of a really refreshing, and a guy that Miami's high on after offering him pretty recently. He also will be there amongst the group, so make sure to check that out later this afternoon and morning with all the updates from the guys that were on campus today. We also have an update with 2024 4-star defensive lineman Dominic McKinley out of Lafayette, Louisiana. He is one of the fastest rising prospects in that 2024 class, a huge defensive lineman. Steven, another guy that you spoke with. Just what were your thoughts after that conversation with Dominic?
Yeah, believe it or not, after that story actually published, he was upgraded from a 4-star to a 5-star. So he's actually now a 5-star defensive lineman. This is a kid who was unranked just a couple of months ago. And then as soon as those On3 rankings came out, he was immediately given 4-star status, and rightfully so. I mean, you look at this kid, he's an absolute wrecking ball. He's a little bit of a quiet kid, not really a huge talker, but whenever you do get to talk to him, you do get the sense that this is a kid who I think is kind of starting to understand his value. He's starting to understand really the amount of attention that he's getting. He's understanding, the weight of the programs that are after him. And he's understanding that I think he's understanding kind of how to be a recruit, if that makes sense. And what I really mean by that is he's understanding kind of how he's starting to learn kind of how to keep things just obscure enough to really keep a lot of these programs on their toes. I'd say that is a very good thing for him. I believe LSU right now is the favorite according to the On3 recruiting prediction machine. But this is a kid who's an absolute load, and Miami's recruiting him like one. Miami knows that this would be an absolutely massive get. I certainly don't think that they're a front runner by any means, and they understand that there is still work to be done. But certainly that's not discouraging them from going after him.
Thank you, Steve, for that. And also from yesterday, kind of taking a step back, we had an opportunity to speak with 2024 safety out of Arizona, Kennedy Urlacher. Yes, the son of Chicago Bears Hall of Famer Brian Urlacher. I had the chance to talk with him with our series Inside the Lines, where we just talk about, everything from football to sports to anything in between. So make sure to check that out. Kennedy is a up and coming safety in that 2024 class that Miami really, really likes. He's very high on Miami as well because they're one of the first, big programs, according to him, to offer him. So Kennedy is a guy that I had the chance to speak to. You kind of get to know him outside the recruiting, the X's and O's, and what he likes to do off the field, his hobbies, and other things like that. So make sure to check out that feature with Kennedy Urlacher and Inside the Lines. And to wrap up our recruiting updates for this morning, Steven, this guy's name is probably the coolest name in this recruiting cycle. Quay Birdsong. I know when you told me you spoke with him, I was like, wait a minute. Forget him as a player. That is the sickest name I've heard in this recruiting cycle so far. Steven, cool name. Talk to me about him as a player, what you got from talking to him as well.
Cool name, cool player too. Another kid who I think has a really good chance to emerge as kind of a priority target for Miami. Another 4-star linebacker out of Georgia. We've seen the Canes really go after Georgia pretty aggressively in this recruiting cycle with guys like Aaron Nolan too. And obviously King Joseph Edwards as well. So quite a few, big 4-star, 5-star targets that Miami's really going after out of the state of Georgia. And obviously, you can certainly chalk that up to what's an overall down year for South Florida talent more generally. Not saying that there's not a tremendous South Florida talent. You look at guys like Jeremiah Smith and Josiah Schrader, which are obviously the first two names that come to your mind whenever you think of the top, when you think of the top Florida prospects. But certainly not as much depth all the way around as kind of we've seen in the past years. And so Miami's kind of turning to the state of Georgia to fill that gap. And Birdsong's kind of one of those guys that I think Miami might be after as a result of that. I think he ranks somewhere around the 130 mark in the On3 industry rankings. He's a top 10 linebacker in the 2024 class. And he's a guy who puts Miami right at the top of his list. Michigan and UCF were some other programs that were recruiting him pretty hard as well. But right now, he's told me that, Miami is the school, Miami is number one for him. And so now it's just really kind of a matter of seeing what the rest of this recruiting process is going to look like for him, how much Miami is really going to push for him, what that contact is going to look like. And whenever he ultimately does get to campus in April, we're going to have to see how that visit goes and where things sit after that as well.
Yeah, this weekend is shaping out to be a huge, huge recruiting weekend for Miami with a ton of blue chip prospects coming in from all over the country. I know Miami still only has one commit in that 2024 class, but I feel like weekends like this and the weekends following will be kind of the stepping stones for Miami as they solidify and kind of get that first guy, and you'll see the dominoes start to fall. I know 2023 cycle, the first commitment didn't come till kind of around this time with March with Antonio Tripp and then the Washington brothers. And I saw something on Twitter, kind of fans were like, hey, is there something to be concerned about? FSU has a few commits, UF has a few commits in the state of Florida, kind of what's going on with Miami. Personally, I think there is nothing to worry about when it comes to these early commitments, because I feel like if a kid commits super, super early, that just gives other programs, hey, you're coming to this school, we're going to target to recruit against you guys. But I do feel like Miami's going to start picking up some traction on the recruiting show coming up and land one of these guys in these upcoming weekends. Steven, I want to get your thoughts on that. With other programs in the state of Florida kind of already established their recruiting class, having 3, 4, 5 guys committed, and Miami still has one. Just what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I've got a while before I'm really hitting the panic button on Miami recruiting because Miami's really playing the long game here. They really aren't pushing for a ton of kids to commit right now. I had a chance to talk to one kid about this, and I asked him point blank, is Miami trying to get you to commit? And he goes, well, they are, but they're also saying, hey, take your time, make sure you commit to the right school, make sure you find the right program. These are the things that you should look for in a school. You want to end up committing to a program that that you're going to trust. And so Miami's really not in a rush to get all of these commitments. And I get that 100% should be or can be kind of concerning to a lot of fans, especially whenever you see Florida with the number 3 class already, and then FSU with like a top 10, top 11 class somewhere around there. So I do get the cause, or I do get why some fans think that this is cause for concern, but we've got quite a while before I'm really hitting the panic button, because we're seeing that what Miami really wants to do with most of these kids is they want to get them on campus first. They want to get them to take that. They want to get them to take an official visit sometime over the summer. They want the recruits to kind of to feel it out. And then the coaches themselves kind of want to feel it out too, because remember, Miami has offered over 200 kids in this cycle. So there is no shortage of the amount of offers that have gone out, which means that Miami also kind of has to figure out, hey, which guys at the end of the day are we ultimately going to take? Because, as nice as it would be, I don't envision Miami taking 200 kids in a recruiting class anytime soon. I don't envision any program doing that in a recruiting class anytime soon. So I think there's a little bit of a feeling out process on both sides. There's obviously, that group of really, really elite kids and really elite talent that Miami would take instantly. Jeremiah Smith says, hey, I want to commit to Miami. I'm flipping from Ohio State. Miami takes him right there on the spot. Same with Josiah Schrader, same with Aaron Nolan, same with Brandon Baker, the same with so many of these really, big name blue chip kids. But quite frankly, most of this class, there's still a little bit of a feeling out process. We've got I think at this point, we're starting to get a general idea of which recruits are really going to be the priority recruits. But even then, Miami's big board is still pretty big. So I think that this is kind of, I feel like, these are two boxers that are kind of feeling each other out in the first round. You're not going to go for the KO in the first round. You're really just using it to kind of feel it out, get to know everything. And then from there, you can kind of figure things out once you get to the 5th, 6th, and 7th rounds, which in this case probably means the summer and fall football season.
Yeah, like I always think, nothing is complete until that pen hits the paper on National Signing Day. So anyone that's kind of worried, do not hit that panic button just yet. In Mario, we trust. I believe he will come through full force, and just the recruits will start coming in, the commits will start coming in. So that is all that we have for you on this episode of Good Morning CaneSport. I would like to thank everyone for joining us and starting their day off with myself and Stephen Wagner. Make sure to stay tuned throughout the day for any updates and breaking news that we have. And for Stephen Wagner, I'm Izubee Charles. Have a great rest of your morning. Goodbye.